Good Woch. Heischim b'chveidach Sanya. I want to take this opportunity to thank Rabbi Shem Tov Zol Zayin Gesund for giving me the privilege of being here this year by Yarchei Kallah and the previous opportunities that I had to do so. And going back 55 years, when I was a camper here in this camp, davening right here in this shul, 55 years ago, 54 years ago, and before that, in Livingston Manor, 56 years ago, and in Swan Lake, 57 years ago. And as we heard yesterday from Rabbi Shem Tov, that when he purchased this camp and he brought the key to the Rebbe gave it to him and told him, saying the camp is obviously the Rebbe's camp, and the Pesachim B'chleidach Sanya, we have to thank the Rebbe for giving us the opportunity, each and every one of us, to be here in Kiryas Gan Yisrael, and to be here at this very momentous occasion where we're commemorating 80 years, Shmeinim Shana, of the Istalkus Hilula of the Rebbe's father, Rav Hagoyin, Achasid HaMakubal, and of Levi Yitzchak, Nishmasei Eden. It's a tremendous chus for every one of us to be here, and the Eibishter Zal helfen, as we know that the Yenu Lulav Tzadik is Peil Yeshua is Bekerev Haaretz, Shabi Taka Emesi Yeshua, and Agansi Yeshua for Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, and for Yidden everywhere, and we should see the Gula Mitis Vashlema Malkeinu B'Reshenu take it from the Yad Mamish. I was asked to give over a Dvar Malchus, to give over a Sikha of the Rebbe, and this week, all of us, those who have the schus of learning 3 Prakim Rambam a day, which is Kanai Nahara, thousands upon thousands of Yidden across the globe, were Isaac this week, a good chalik of this week, in learning Hilchos Beis HaBchira. Hashgacha Pratis is not very far from it. It's a shtikl chazara because everybody was learning Hilchos Beis HaBchira during the 3 weeks. And now this week we had a shtikl chazara on Hilchos Beis HaBchira. It's interesting that in the Fabrengen of Chaf Av, Tafshin Lamed Vav, which was printed by Vad Alachas Lahak, was published for this Shabbos. So over there, Bechlau, we have an impression that Hilchos Beis HaBchira is a Psarin Yishas Mangram and after for the 3 weeks and for the 9 days. But it's interesting that on Chaf Av, Shabbos Parshas, and Chaf Av, Tafshin Lamed Vav, the Rebbe made a shturim about the learning of Hilchos Beis HaBchira. And over there, he had nothing. It was independent of the 3 weeks. So obviously, the Indian of Hilchos Beis HaBchira is a tremendous Indian. The Rebbe spoke of there also about children, how children why children are not involved in being Beis HaBchira, because they are Isaac in Hilchos Beis HaBchira the entire time. All their learning diminishes the Golus and brings the Geula very, very quickly. So the Rambam in Hilchos Beis HaBchira, Perek Aleph, Halacha Tes, says Ve'ein Bainim Ba'etz Beilut Klal. Now when you build the Beis HaMikdash, you don't build any protruding or visible wood. Either you build it with stones or you build it with bricks and lime. You don't use wood in a noticeable way in the building of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rabbi immediately attacks the Rambam, and he says, what do you mean? There's a Mefedish Mishnah in Masechta Midas that there was a Lishka in the Beis HaMikdash off the Azara, which was called Lishkas Ha'etz. This was Lishkas Kayin Gadol. Why was it called Lishkas Ha'etz? The Pashtus, because it was built out of wood. So how could the Rambam say you don't build any wood in the Beis HaMikdash when the Mishnah clearly says there was a Lishkas Ha'etz? So the Kesef Mishnah and other Mefarshim tried to put end for the Rambam. And the Nekuda, they say maybe the Lishkas Ha'etz was not made from wood. Maybe it was made from stone. And Afal Nikena was called Lishkas Ha'etz for other reasons. Maybe they kept wood there. All kinds of reasons could be. But Lav Daka was made out of wood. Now Kemuvan is a very doichik teretz, because Lishkas Ha'etz, the Pashtus, is made out of wood. That's why it's called Lishkas Ha'etz. So the Rebbe suggests that the Rambam himself actually deals with this question. The Rambam says, as we just quoted, Ein bainin bay eitz beilet kla. You don't build wood that's protruding, that's visible, that's on the surface, however you want to attach the word beilet. But if you build the wood a little bit in and you put a layer of lime over it, then it's not a problem. It's not beilet, it's not on the surface, it's not visible, it's not a problem at all. So it's very possible that the Lishkas HaEitz was made out of wood, but it was covered over with a layer of lime and it wasn't visible on the surface, and therefore it's not an issue. And the Rambam's Makir is actually in Gemara Rosh Hashanah Daf Daled, where the Gemara says that Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the Beis HaMikdash, he built 3 rows of stone and 1 row of cedar wood. How could you build cedar wood in the Beis HaMikdash? So the Gemara says, Shake bibinyana, he put it a little bit in the building, and he covered it over with lime. So we see that there's such a concept of building wood into the Beis HaMikdash as long as it's not beilet, as long as it's not on the surface, it's not visible. So the teretz is pashat, as the Rambam himself explained. The isser of building wood in the Beis HaMikdash is only if it's beilet, but if it's not beilet, if it's not on the surface, if it's not visible, it's not an issue. And therefore the teretz is pashat. The Lishkas HaEitz was built out of wood, but the wood was covered over with a layer of lime. So this answers how it was mutter to make a Lishkas HaEitz, how it was mutter to make a lishka of wood. But it doesn't explain why would they make it out of wood. All the other Lishachis in the Beis HaMikdash were made out of stone. So why Dafka the Lishkas Kein Gadol was made out of wood? Can make it out of stone like all the other Lishachis. What's the problem? So the Bala Ilula, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, writes in his Rishimus on Masechta Midas, he writes that the reason why the Lishkas Kein Gadol was called Lishkas HaEitz, so he connects it with, first of all, he writes that it was only called Lishkas HaEitz during the time of the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash until after the passing of Shimon HaTzadik. After the passing of Shimon HaTzadik, the name was changed to Lishkas Parhedrin. As we all know, the Mishnah in Yuma says, Shivas Yamim Kedem Yemei Kippurim Afrishin Kein Gadol Mi Beisai, and they were taken to the Beis HaMikdash to Lishkas Parhedrin. So the Lishka of the Kein Gadol was called Lishkas Parhedrin. What's the meaning of Lishkas HaEitz and what's the meaning of Lishkas Parhedrin? And why was the name changed after the passing of Shimon HaTzadik? So the Levi Yitzchak explains it very beautifully. And he says that Eitz, wood, is connected with Arichas Yamim. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya, Yeshaya Perek Samachei, Kimei HaEitz Yemei Ami. That the days of my people are like the days of a tree. A tree represents longevity, Arichas Yamim. As we know that the trees live a very long time. We know that there are redwood trees that are 1,000 years old. So a tree represents Arichas Yamim, longevity. And Kimei HaEitz Yemei Ami, Yidden are a nation of longevity, like a tree. So being that the Kohen Gadol's inyan is Arichas Yamim, and how do we know that the Kohen Gadol's inyan is Arichas Yamim? So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak explains it first al pi Kabbalah, that we know the pasuk says Eirech Yamim Bimina, that there's longevity to the right, and we know that the inyan of a Kohen is Isha Chesed. Chesed is D'raya Yamina. We all say in Pascha Elio every Friday afternoon. Chesed D'raya Yamina. Chesed is the right arm. So being that the Kohen Gadol is Isha Chesed to the right, so therefore, and that's Eirech Yamim Bimina. So the inyan of the Kohen Gadol is Arichas Yamim, and Kohenim Gedalim were Takim Meirich Yamim. And on top of that, not only were they Meirich Yamim, but they were Mezake Yidden Bechlal with Arichas Yamim. And we know that from the Medrash. We learned in Pashas Masei only a few weeks ago that a Heirig Nefesh Bishgaga, one who kills unintentionally, has to go to Ari Miklat, V'yashav Sham Ad Meis HaKohen HaGadol. And he stays in Ari Miklat until the Kohen Gadol passes away. Why Dafka till the Kohen Gadol passes away? So the Medrash explains, and Rashi actually quotes it in his Pirush on Chumash, that the Kohen Gadol is Meirich Yom of Shaladam. The Kohen Gadol provides people with longevity, with long life. And the Reitzeach was Mekatzer Yom of Shalom. So it's Eine B'din that it's not correct that the Mekatzer should go out before the Marich. And therefore, he has to stay in the Ari Miklot Ad Mois HaKayin HaGadol. So we see that not only is the Kayin Gadol himself connected with Arichas Yamim, but the Kayin Gadol is the provider for Arichas Yamim for Gans Klal Yisrael. He's Meirich Yam of Shalom. And therefore, it's very appropriate Eirech Yamim Bimina that the Lishkas Kayin Gadol should be a Lishkas Ha'etz, because Eitz represents Arichas Yamim. However, that was only until the passing of Shimon HaTzadik. After the passing of Shimon HaTzadik, so we know that the situation in Klal Yisrael deteriorated, and it deteriorated ad kedei kach that the position of Kayin Gadol was sold not to the most worthy person, but to the highest bidder. And because of the fact that the position of Kayin Gadol was sold to the highest bidder, there was a matzav of terrible corruption by Klal Yisrael. So therefore, Kayanim Gedalim became involved, who were not roi to be Kayanim Gedalim. And we know that if a Kayin Gadol goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur and is not roi to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so Rachmana litzlan, it's teignisht. There were Kayanim Gedalim who died in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and that's why a rope was connected to the leg when they went in, in case they have to be pulled out. But Al Kopanim, they weren't Meitzah Shnasei, they didn't survive the year. And therefore, a new Kayin Gadol needed to be appointed every year. And that's why the Lishka was called Lishkas Parhedrin. Parhedrin means government-appointed officials. Government-appointed officials, every year they appoint new officials. So since the Kayanim Gedalim were a new Kayin Gadol was appointed every year, therefore the Lishka was called Lishkas Parhedrin. And the Rebbe's father explains that Parhedrin is made up of three words: Par, Har, and Din. All three of these words are connected with Gvura, as he explains Al Pi Kabbalah. So Lishkas Ha'etz is Chesed, Eirech Yamim, Arichas Yamim. Lishkas Parhedrin is the opposite. So until the passing of Shimon HaTzadik, when the Kayanim Gedalim were Tzadikim, it was called Lishkas Ha'etz. After the passing of Shimon HaTzadik, it was called Lishkas Parhedrin. So the question is, and this can help us understand why this can help us understand. So the question is, it's a little bit strange that a room in the Beis Hamikdash, a chamber in the Beis Hamikdash, should be given a derogatory name. Why should we take a chamber in the Beis Hamikdash? Melavah, the fact was that the matzav of Klal Yisrael was not the Seder, and the fact was that the office of Kahuna G'dayla was going to unworthy people. But we should take a chamber in the Beis Hamikdash and name it like that. Bifrat, that the Mishnah says, when was this Lishkas Parhedrin in use? Shivas Yamim Kedem Yom Kippurim. You take the Kayin Gadol away from his house and you put him in the Lishkas Parhedrin. The 7 days before Yom Kippur is the 7 days of Aseret Yemei Tshuva. In Aseret Yemei Tshuva, we're extremely careful with the way we speak. We shouldn't speak in a derogatory way. So Hayatachem that Dafkin Aseret Yemei Tshuva, they use this expression, Lishkas Parhedrin. Musman Dach Zagen, we have to say that obviously there's a positive dimension, and especially bear in mind that during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, after the passing of Shimon HaTzadik, there were times when there were worthy Kayanim Gedalim. Yechanan Kayin Gadol went in 80 years consecutively into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There was Rabbi Elazar ben Charsim, Rabbi Shmuel ben Pavi. There were Kayanim Gedalim who were also Meirich Yamim for many years, went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And in their time, it was also called Lishkas Parhedrin. So Hayatachem, they took a room in the Beis Hamikdash and gave it a derogatory name. So the Rebbe explains it on two levels. First on a more superficial level, and then on a deeper level. The more superficial level is also beautiful, but the deeper level was extremely beautiful. On the more superficial level, the Rebbe answers it with a simple question. The Kayanim Gedalim who spent a fortune of money to buy the office of Kayin Gadol, they were not stupid. They saw what happened to the previous Kayin Gadol. They saw that the previous Kayin Gadol bought the office of Kahuna G'dayla. He wasn't worthy. And as a result of it, he wasn't Meitzah Shnasa. He didn't live through the year. So why would somebody take a fortune of money and spend it on buying an office, buying a position, which he knows that the likelihood is he knows he's not Roy, Yadinish Benafshe. So why would he go and spend so much money to be able to become the Kayin Gadol so that he shouldn't be Meitzah Shnasa Rachmana Litzlan? That's a mishkan since the day. So the answer is that what the Kohen Gadol was Zeicha on Yom Kippur to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. When he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he saw the Shekhinah. He had a one-on-one interaction with the Shekhinah. He had a gilui similar to what Yidden had by Matan Torah. Ata hareisol adaski Hashem hu alikim eined milvadei. Panim bepanim diber Hashem imachem. That's what the Kohen Gadol experienced when he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So Yidden, even those Yidden who were not Roy, were so passionate to get an opportunity one time to see the Gilui Hashchinah in the Kodesh HaKadoshim that they were prepared to spend a fortune of money, knowing that there was a chance they were going to forfeit their lives. Abi ein mol, abi one time to be zeicher to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and to see the Gilui Hashchinah. And for this, the room was named Lishkas Parhedrin, because the Kohen Gadol, when he spent the 7 days in preparation to going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the knowledge of the fact that this Lishka is called Lishkas Parhedrin and reminds us of what a privilege it is to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim even one time, inspired the Kohen Gadol to prepare himself properly for this incredible event. However, the Rebbe is not satisfied with this teretz alone, because at the end of the day, it's a derogatory thing. At the end of the day, it's called Lishkas Parhedrin because the Kohen Gadol wasn't Meitzah Shnasei, which is not a very fine thing. It's not something to be proud of. So the Rebbe explains it on a deeper level, and this is amazing. And the Kudah the Rebbe says is like this. Taka the Kohen Gadol's inyan is Arichas Yamim, but the Kohen Gadol would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur as the Shliach of Klal Yisrael, and he led Klal Yisrael in Avodas HaTshuvah. Right? The Avodah of Yom Kippur is the Avodas HaTshuvah. Shuvah, by definition, is the opposite of Arichas Yamim. And I'll explain why. By tzaddikim it says, Yelchu mechayil al choyim. Tzaddikim ein lahem menucha, lei be'elam hazeh, lei be'elam abosh, and emar Yelchu mechayil al choyim. So a tzaddik doesn't remain in the same place. He grows, he advances, Yelchu mechayil al choyim, but it's mechayil el choyim, meaning he's in a certain position, and from that position, he grows to a higher position. But it's all connected, so that's called Arichas Yamim. It's a continuation. It's longevity, mechayil al choyim. But about tshuva, the whole avodah of tshuva is self-transformation. To no longer be who you were before. As the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, that the Baal Tshuva should be able to say, Eineni oisei ha'isha asa oisa mamaisim. I'm no longer that person that did those deeds. I'm a different person. Ich mit Tshuva getan. Bin ich geworden a neuer Mensch. A neuer Mensch, if you become a new person, if you experience self-transformation, that's the opposite of Arichas Yam. That means you're not a continuation of where you were before. You're a new, fresh person. Starting all over again. So the Avodah of the Kohen Gadol in going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim on behalf of Klal Yisrael, leading an Avodah of Tshuva, is actually connected with the idea of becoming transformed, becoming renewed, becoming a new person. So even those Kohanim Gedolim who were worthy and were Meitzah Shnasei and did go in again the next year and went in for 80 years, but each year they became a new entity, a new person. A transformed individual. The opposite of Arichas Yamim. And this explains another pella. The din is that when the Kohen Gadol comes out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it says that he takes off the big day bad that he wore in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, v'hinicham sham, and he places them there. So Chazal say, v'hinicham sham means tu'unim gniza bimkaimam. You have to bury the big day bad with which the Kohen Gadol went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim on the spot. In the place where he took them off, you have to bury them. This man only wore these begadim one day. Right? He went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim Yom Kippur with these begadim only one day. Why should you bury them? Why not fold them neatly, have them pressed, and next year use them again? The teretz is because next year he'll be a new Kohen Gadol. A new Kohen Gadol is going to need new begadim. Even if it'll be the same person for 80 years, but every year he's going to be a new Kohen Gadol, because the Kohen Gadol, by going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and leading in the Avodah of Tshuva of Klal Yisrael, is experiencing a transformation. He becomes a new person. And that's why it's called Lishkas Parhedrin, because every year it's a new Kohen Gadol. And that's a beautiful concept. That's not anything derogatory. That's the most positive, incredible thing. So the Kohen Gadol actually represents both phenomena, both concepts. On one hand, the Kohen Gadol is a tzaddik, and the idea of a tzaddik is Yelchem Echayil Al Chayil Eirech Yamim B'Mina Arichas Yamim. Kohen Gadol himself has Arichas Yamim, and the Kohen Gadol is Mezaka Klal Yisrael with Arichas Yamim, and that's why the lishka of the Kohen Gadol is made out of wood, because that represents Eirech Yamim B'Mina Yimei Ha'etz Yimei Ami. At the same time, since the Aved of the Kohen Gadol is tshuva, and tshuva is self-transformation, so that's why the lishka is also called Lishkas Parhedrin, which is the opposite chuna of Arichas Yamim. So you have that both names, and that's why, although the chamber was built of wood, it was covered over with a layer of lime. The wood shouldn't be visible, because there's another aspect of the Kohen Gadol which also has to be considered, the idea of Lishkas Parhedrin. And the Rebbe says that Melavah Pshitus, it's an obvious thing. The Rebbe's father doesn't even have to mention it. That's why in Masechta Midas, where it talks about how the Beis HaMikdash was originally built, when Yidden were B'chinas Tzadikim, it's called Lishkas Ha'etz. And in Masechta Yuma, which is about the Aved of Yom Kippur, the Aved of Tshuva, over there it's called Lishkas Parhedrin. So werd Alts Verempfert. And the Shiluv, the Rebbe speaks about in the Sikha, the Shiluv of Avedas HaTzadikim and Avedas HaTshuva. So L'cha'era, it's quite obvious that this is connected with the concept that we learn about in Chassidus all the time. It's brought from the Zohar, that Mashiach Osil Asavit Tzadikaya B'Tiyufta. Mashiach is going to bring Tzadikim to Tshuva. Mashiach is going to make the fusion between Tzadikim and Tshuva. So this concept, that the Kohen Gadol has in him side the Maila of Yelchem Echayil Al Chayil of Eirech Yam B'Mina of Tzadikim. He has side the Maila of Balei Tshuva. It's the fact that he leads in Aved of Tshuva on Yom Kippur. So Mashiach Asel Asabet Tzadikaya B'Tiyufta, and the Ebershter wird helfen. B'schus the Baal HaIlula Shmeinim Shana B'Gvurei Shmeinim Shana. There'll be a Tikberes, a starke Yeshua, Peil Yeshua is Bekerev HaAretz. Yidden will geholfen werden with everything they need, Sayin Eretz Yisrael and Sayin Chutz La'aretz. And the Iker HaIkrim is, we should already be Zeicha, tonight Mamish. We should be Zeicha to see the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema, Malkeinu B'Reishenu, the Rebbe soll uns Galo werden, as a Rispiren von Galus, und nehmen ganz Klal Yisrael, zum Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, und Sham Nismech Habay, im Heira V'Yameinu,